All the time I've been doing these car camera reviews, people have told me that I need to take a look at the cameras from DOD. They might be called DOD for all I know, but let's call them DOD. Anyway, conveniently, they've sent me over their LS430W dash camera. I think it's the most recent model in their range, perhaps the top one as well. Not entirely sure, you'd have to have a look on their website. On the side of the box there's a few specs there. Notice at the top there, the best selling car DVR in the world. That's the company rather than this particular one, I think. Now the LS430W is a newer model. There is an LS430 without a W as well. Important that you get the W one because it's got a wide dynamic range. That means it's better for night photography. Now let's have a look what's inside the box. We'll just go through these things quickly. We've got the usual instruction booklet, then there's software because this is a GPS camera, so it needs software for that. We've got a standard USB lead, we've got a car power adapter, that's got a 4-meter lead on it, an HDMI lead as well, and then two different mounts. One of those uses a sticky back thing. It's a usual rolly ball joint job and a sticky back mount on the back of it, and then the other one has the same kind of top on it, but on that one there's a suction cup on the bottom, so you've got a choice of which one you want to use. The camera itself, of course, is the last thing in the box. This is what it looks like. Quite a neat device, subtle in a way as well. On the top there, that kind of bulgy bit there, that's where you mount it, but that's also where the GPS antenna would be. You've got vents at the bottom of the camera here as well. That's a white LED light on the front that you can switch on and off. Across the top we've got the power, AV out, and a couple of buttons on there. And then on the back of it we've got that 2.7-inch LCD screen in the middle, which is flanked by 3 buttons either side of the microphone, just where my thumb is on the left there as well. On this side we've got the little place where you put in your trans flash card or micro SD card. I'll be using a class 10 when I'm doing my filming in this one. And then on the other side we've got a reset hole there and an HDMI out as well. It's the usual mini HDMI socket on this one. I'll show you how it all goes together and how it fits in the car. Well, first thing, of course, on the top of the camera I mentioned you've got that kind of large bulge there. That is the GPS antenna, but it's also the part where the mount clips in. Here's an example mount. I'm going to use the adhesive one here, but they're both the same. They've got this bit that slides in from one direction only and then clicks nice and firmly in place. It doesn't vibrate, it's very solid, that. And then of course the other bit is you adjust the ball joint bit to get it just how you want it on your window and tighten up that nut. It's a nice simple mount. Quite a few manufacturers are using this. It seems to be the one that everyone's picked as the best way to do this. And I've got to say, I think I agree as well after using some other mounts. It's a bit difficult to get out of there, but that might be because it's new. I'll show you what it looks like inside the car windscreen now. Well, there it is, front and centre. I'm using the adhesive mount on this one. It's got a black adhesive on this one rather than the grey or white that some companies sometimes use that makes these things more obvious. Now, I've got it behind the mirror there, but I've got it sticking down just a little bit below where the mirror is, and that's so that I can see it while I'm driving along. And I'll demonstrate to you now why that might be useful. So as you're driving along, you've got a couple of different options of what you display on that screen. You can, of course, have it go blank if you don't want it to distract you from driving. You can have it show the road ahead like it's doing now. Or alternatively, you can have it display the speed like it's doing now with this nice, bright, clear display. You'll notice at the top right of there, there's also a compass, and at the top left, there's a 40 in a circle. The reason that that's there is I've set the speed warning in the camera to 40. If I exceed 40, it will warn me with a little bit of a display on the screen. Just look for the number 40, there you go, it's gone red now to show I've gone past the speed. There's no audible warning as far as I can make out, so it's not that useful a feature, but it's there all the same. Of course, the speed is calculated using the GPS chip, and that's not always an accurate way to determine speed in a car, especially in sort of windy roads and things, but at least it's got that function if you want to make some use of that screen whilst you're driving along. Unfortunately, that speed warning isn't a smart warning. It doesn't know what the speed limit is on the road that you're driving at the moment. It's just an arbitrary figure that you set so that whenever your car exceeds that speed, the little indicator will go red. So it's not an awful lot of use, but I thought I should mention it all the same. Now, I just wanted to show you again what the camera looks like when it's powered up. Notice at the top left there we've got a little LED. That will tell you whether the camera's got power and whether it's recording. So you can use that to tell you what's going on. You don't have to look at the screen. If the screen's powered off, you still know what's happening. However, if you do look at the screen now, you can see there's an awful lot of stuff on there, a lot of icons, and I'll explain why. That might be a little bit of an issue in a second. Unfortunately, I've only got another dull day to show you today. As you can see, it's very overcast, it's quite dim, quite a few people have the lights on, even though it's mid-afternoon. But the reason I'm out today is because I realised that I'd had the exposure set wrong on the camera. When I did the close-up shots of the camera to demonstrate the menus, I realised I've got the exposure set to -2, which would make all my previous shots too dark. I was wondering why they were looking a bit dark, but I never spotted the icon on the screen. Because that screen's so cluttered, there's so much information on it, it's like information overload, and I missed the fact the exposure was set to -2. So as a result, I've had to come out again now and do some additional shots with the exposure set to 0. I've also set the white balance to cloudy because obviously it's cloudy, so I'm assuming that's going to improve the picture quality a little bit. So hopefully this looks pretty decent and a bit brighter than some of the stuff I shot before, even though the weather is a little bit dull. Now it's really a very good job that I'd spotted I'd knocked the exposure to the wrong level, because I was going to report back on this camera and say it's a good camera overall. The only problem is that it records footage that's too dark. Well, it doesn't. I'd knocked the exposure down by accident. I'll explain how I managed to do that later on, because I've figured it out now, what I actually pressed to get it to do that, so I won't do it again. But ignoring that, all the footage I've got that I'm showing you now was recorded with the right exposure level. Look at the bottom of the screen, you can see a few things. If we go from right to left, we've got the location, and then we've got the speed reading. Now that currently is showing at miles per hour. You can change it to kilometers per hour in the settings, and you can switch the speed indicator off if you think it's going to incriminate you. In the middle there you've got the registration number. I've changed that to show Techmoan, and then the model of the camera you're using and the time and date and things. Again, you can switch bits and pieces of this off in the menus that I'll show you in a bit. Now, as far as the quality of the footage goes, it's absolutely excellent. Again, another really good performance by a car camera, nice and sharp. One thing I noticed in particular is that it doesn't have that kind of fisheye effect that you get on some cameras where they have an ultra-wide angle. Look at this as I swing around this corner now. You would notice there, if you had a camera with one of those ultra-wide angles, that gives that fisheye effect, which actually makes you feel a little bit sort of sick as it swings around. It's kind of bulgy and makes you feel a bit nauseous, so you don't want that in a car camera. One thing you do want, though, is decent night footage, and again, another camera that performs really well in low light. So we're at, what's that now, just before 8 o'clock in the evening, so it is going to be pitch black outside, and this is the footage that you get. Now it seems like the car cameras I've been testing recently have really figured out how to do low light footage. This one, of course, is the LS430W, and the W is the wide dynamic range, which is the part of it that means it's going to be really good in low light conditions like this. You could maybe save £10–15, get an LS430, the previous model without the W on it, but you wouldn't get the same nighttime performance as this, so I'd recommend spending just that little bit extra. Get the 430W if you plan on getting one of these, because then you get the full package. I think this is the most recent and up-to-date camera that they do. Now, you'll have seen this shot before on a lot of cameras. People have mentioned to me after they've seen my nighttime footage, they'd really like to see something in conditions where there's no street lights, because they drive around in places where there aren't any street lights. So I've deliberately taken some of that. I've found a road here with no street lights. I've got my full beam on, and now you can see what that looks like. Now, this camera can see pretty much what I can see with my headlights. I know that for a fact because I'll just dip them here as I go around the corner because of the car coming the other way. Now, I remember this. I saw this yellow dot on the right thinking, what is that? And as I got nearer, I realised as my headlights lit it up, it was a woman walking her dog down the road with a fluorescent jacket on. So the camera can pretty much see what you can see. Right, let's quickly go through those menus and settings in the camera. First off, press the menu button, you get into the menus obviously. There's two sets of menus. We're in the first one here, wide dynamic range. You can't switch that off, there's an option there, but it just says on all the time, which is good because you want it on all the time. Those are your different resolutions. I've only shot 1080p 30 video for this review. That's where I spotted the exposure was set wrong in the camera at -2. First time I noticed it. So that was the moment that I spotted, and then I went afterwards and shot some more footage. White balance, you can set the white balance in the camera. I probably wouldn't bother. I'd leave it on auto. You don't want car cameras where you have to keep changing things. Just leave everything in auto and it should work fine. Record the audio, yes or no. Have the date stamp on or off. You can loop the videos whether you want it 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or you don't want it to loop. We should probably go up to a 4 gig limit, I'd imagine. How high you want the G sensor setting, or you want to switch it off, whether you want the motion detection on or off. That's where I put the registration number, which of course I've put Techmoan in there. You can put what you want. Driver fatigue warning, didn't test this. I'd imagine it'd probably flash up a warning after a certain amount of time. You can have the GPS on or off. And this is where you determine whether you want that large speed display to come up on the screen while you're driving along, and how long you want to wait before it comes on, and also whether you want a warning whether you exceed a certain speed. There's where you select the time zone that you're in so that the GPS knows exactly where you are. You can select the speed units to kilometers per hour, miles per hour, and you can flip the video upside down if you have the camera the other way up. Now if you press menu twice, you get into the second set of menus, and they're pretty simple things in this, the kind of stuff you'd expect. Format the card, change the language to these different options here. Date and time, that's where you set it. Frequency 50-60 Hz. LED, if you switch the LED on, that's that white LED on the front of the camera that comes on like that. I'm not entirely sure of the use for that because the battery in this camera only lasts about 5 minutes, so it's not the kind of thing you could use much outside the car. Whether you want the beep sound on or off, whether you want the screen to go blank after a certain amount of time, TV mode for playing it back over the TV, whether you want that speed display, the speed stamp on your video or not. That's the version of the camera I've got, and that's how you change it back to default. Now, down the side of the screen here, you've got these 3 buttons. The middle one is also an emergency button. You press that, you lock the file currently being recorded. But notice they're all flat, very hard to determine what that button is while you're driving along. Similarly, on this side, the middle one, the exposure button, that's how I managed to knock the exposure down by 2. Notice here, when I press it, notice at the top there's a little yellow light bulb, and there's a minus number in there, -1 at the moment. If I press it again, -2. So that's how I managed to knock the exposure down. I accidentally pressed that middle button on the right there. Now I know what it is. I won't go near it again. But yeah, if you want to press that emergency button on the left or the one on the right, very hard to determine while you're driving along which one is which and what do they do. There's no way of really spotting it. Now let's test out that HDMI out function, but we'll need something else. We'll need power. You'll need to power the camera at the same time via the USB plug, because the camera seems to only last for about 5 minutes under its own power. I'm not too sure whether it's got a battery in it or just a capacitor, but remember, 2 wires to plug it into your television. Now when you do plug it in, it will give you a live viewfinder of what the camera can see. However, it won't let you record video at the same time. It will let you take photos. You can move it into the photo mode and take a still photo, but for some reason you can't record video whilst you're watching the live viewfinder. Not an issue to me, but I just wanted to mention it for the remote control aircraft chaps who like to use some of these cameras in their aircraft for taking video. I'll have to say this one isn't suitable for that function. However, it is suitable for playing back through the television like I'm doing now, fast forwarding, all the usual things that you kind of use while you're plugging a camera into the television. Now I'm going to show you the software, but I'm showing you the software on my Mac because this is the first dash cam I've come across that's supplied with Mac software. Normally it's Windows only and I have to use my Mac using Boot Camp to run Windows 8. Well, not this time. I can use it in its native OS 10 mode. Now the software is pretty basic. It does what you need, but it doesn't do an awful lot else. One thing I'll mention, the files on the SD card, you can only see the video files. You can't see the data from the GPS. That's hidden in a folder somewhere. But when you're playing it back, you get a load of files in, you load your movie files in, the GPS data is pulled through automatically. Now just wait for the pause. There's the pause between files as it moves on to the next one. I've got a big list of files on the right there. If you had longer files than the 3 minutes ones that I've got, then you wouldn't have as many breaks like that. You've got a map on the right with data pulled through from the internet showing you where you are and where you're about to go to. We've got the speed at the bottom, only does kilometers per hour on this one, and you've got some data from your G sensors and the location. You can mute the sound and all that kind of stuff. Pretty simple, but it works fine, nice and easy as well for most people to understand. So just a couple of bits of technical information now. The files the camera records are MOV format, that's H.264 The bit rates I found to be in the high 15s up to 16 megabits a second. That's variable bit rate, of course, so can alter, but that was a 1080p 30 clip during the daytime. If you don't believe me, download a clip and run it through your own piece of software to test it. The battery life I got, if it has a battery, was about 5 minutes. I don't know if it has a battery then, but it basically don't rely on the battery in this camera. Now, as far as the positives go, it has excellent video quality day and night. It's got great sound, or pretty decent sound anyway. It's compact, as you can see on the video clips. It fits behind my rearview mirror fine. It's got the GPS speed display on it, which is something I haven't seen before. It's a recognisable brand, and it comes with Mac software, which I've never seen before, as well as Windows, of course. On the negative side, the only thing I can really think of is that it's a bit noticeable in your windscreen. Most car cameras are, but this one can't really be hidden away, much the same as most of the others as well. It's got that busy on-screen display, which can get a little bit confusing, and those buttons are indistinct, so you don't know which one you're pressing, especially if you're driving along and trying to do it just by feeling at them. So as you can see from that, I was struggling a little bit to find anything particularly negative to say about this camera other than minor niggles. I mean, it's a great little camera. It's a great all-rounder, performs well in all conditions. Nice and neat and small as well. I always thought DOD cameras were expensive. They're not. I had a look on eBay. You can get this one for about £115, $190 US, 140 euros, or 0.15 ounces of gold. If you want to buy one of these, there's links in the video description that will take you through to places that people have given me positive feedback about. There's a lot of dodgy people out there nowadays, so you've got to be careful who you give your money to. I've also got downloadable samples on my blog, and there's a link in the description to those as well. So if you're looking for a small GPS car camera that's capable of taking excellent quality video in all lighting conditions, I certainly think you should take a good close look at the DOD LS430W. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.